this exciting video where you once again join me in the beautiful landscape of Scotland. And today I wasn't actually sure where to go for a video, but the first place I've stopped is Glen Prosen, because look at this incredible view that we're blessed with. It's an incredible sunny day today and the weather's just perfect. There's hardly a breeze, maybe just enough of a slight breeze to keep me cool. And I'm basically just out in the car here on a wee road trip, thinking of somewhere to go for an adventure. Obviously this time of year everything's so overgrown. You can see it here at this lay-by at Glen Prosen. Look how high all these ferns and the bracken and stuff is. There's actually an old quarry and stuff here. And yeah, it's just a beautiful piece of land. And I can actually see down here in the field in front of us, there's an old abandoned building, and down here at an ancient time where these trees are, this was actually an old croft. And it's cool to see that. There's a couple of the walls and a bit of the building that still remains. Maybe I should nip down there and document that for today's video, because it's long grass and stuff. There's a lot of ticks and stuff at this time of year, and that's how I'm more wary. But it looks like there's a clear stretch down to that croft. Maybe that should be today's video. That's how I am on this channel, folks. It's spontaneous. I sometimes see an incredible piece of land and I think I need to get it on camera, and then when I'm standing speaking about what I've seen, we just spot something else. And I think I was down there years ago on a different adventure, but it could be cool to go down here fresh wee record. So let's get into action. So here we are, folks, we're on the adventure now in this paradise land, and just imagine how this little croft may have looked when there was a little house with smoke coming out the chimney, and then imagine the little farm buildings stretching along throughout this area of the land. And it's incredible because in this area of Glen Prosen there was actually loads of little farm crofts, and I have documented them over the years. And there's a cool one I was actually at recently, just before the summer. I went down there in the springtime before everything got overgrown. There's a cool cottage down in the hollow, and it's cool over the years to piece together the history of these places with each video, and you get an idea of what all went on in these glens from ancient times all the way to the modern era. And it's just so much fun to keep having video upon video. Years ago when I was here, I wasn't even as good at exploring, and I didn't have the same knowledge as to like what I was looking at and stuff, and that's why it's cool to come back nowadays and revisit some of the old locations with a fresh idea of what we're seeing. Another interesting fact, at the far side of the glen I can see ancient wall lines and stuff on that grassy embankment, and that's all stuff as well that I've never recorded before. It's always so interesting to come out into these places, and Scotland's got so much little hidden treasures, cool little things like this. And you can just see the way this wall stands with the corrugated iron. It gives the land character when you see the remains of history like that. Yeah, look at this. This old building here is built with the old stones off the hill, probably gathered from the nearby areas. Often they cleared massive amounts of stones off areas like this when they first built the sheds and the buildings. The sheep are just chilling over there, and I can actually see this ditch line coming down, and it was likely they had a water source coming down there to feed the farm. This is such a cool individual unique croft. This all looks like boggy land now, but you can actually see there's an old wall line leading along here. And some of these settlements are so ancient that they've actually been on the land since before the 1600s, even ancient times. There's often history on these lands of Scotland all the way back to like the Iron Age. I'm talking like 2,000 years ago. Before the Romans and stuff came to these lands, there was already folk, civilizations here, or people that made their settlements, and their lives were in these glens, clearing a wee bit of land, and they would have their little homes or little communities in the glens. And you can definitely see the remains of that over the years, kind of on my videos for sure with the buildings. I'm just looking at this right here. This has actually been something right here, folks. Check it out. You can see the circle. There's been some kind of circular building here. Now it's just like the stone indentations. And look, I can see another wall line over there. I might have to go over that direction once we've looked at this. This is the main heart, the main hub here of the croft. I'm just thinking I might be able to get my way around and we'll have a closer look at the stonework of the old building. the fact that the old building's still here, that gives you more of a picture of the Croft and gives you an idea how much was here. Apart from that, you can see the lie of the land, the way they had levelled parts of it for the original farm. And down here you can actually see the stone outline here of the main farm compound. Pretty much where you can see this thick boggy grass would have been the main heart of the farmyard, and there would have been so much more buildings here that's now gone. It's like a maze here. I'm weaving between the long tufts of grass. The temperature today is just incredible. I've obviously got the black t-shirt on as well. That's absorbing more heat probably. What a land. I can actually see the moon is out up there. It maybe doesn't even come out on the camera. The moon's out there in the sky, and apart from that it's just clear with no clouds at all. And then in the far distance we've got a few clouds over the high hills and the high glens. Yeah, let's have a look at this, folks. Let's head on in. It's not only the landscape on this channel, it's also the history, and we'll love to see it and document what is left from an ancient time. And this is a cool bit of shelter actually out of that sunshine. Look at this massive sandstone lintel stone here. Look at that. I can't believe it's not broken. It looks like the whole weight of the roof is pretty much resting on it. I've documented other farms, and normally stones that were this good quality were actually taken away and reused for other projects building nearby. So it's cool to see that this one's still here. Often they get broken as well and split because that's sandstone. Obviously sedimentary bedrock, super fragile and brittle, easily worn from the weather, and you can see the original markings here from the chisels is still on the stones. Whoa, there's a wasp flying around my head, folks. But yeah, the original chisel marks. Whoa, see the wasps up this glen, folks? They're massive. That wasp right there is a beast. I can hear a moose or something squeaking. Maybe a rat. We're right in the heart of nature. See Scottish summer, it's often terrifying when you're out and about. The amount of beasts and creatures fleeing around. And these wasps only nest in here. Whoa, look at it in here, folks. That's obviously the roof's blowing off and landed there, and the sheep are using it as a bit of a shelter. That wasp is still flying around. It's probably getting the wood off the top of there. I'm going to punch on out of this spot. Like, wasps is one of the things I really don't like, because in a previous adventure years ago when I was little, I actually stood on a wasp bike. And yeah, if you ever stand on a wasp bike, folks, you know how that goes down. It's no much fun, and I've been totally covered in wasps before and stung really bad. Look at this, eh? That cool old wall line just sticking out of the thick vegetation of summertime Scotland here. It's absolute paradise. I'm just loving today's adventure so far. And like I say, when I pulled in at the car park at the top, I wasn't even planning on coming down here, and I'd forgotten there was so much here. I think I'd never ever documented this so in depth, because you can see how the original building there that we looked at has actually continued on down here all the way to this point. And then it's like there's been a door going in here, and just think the old cart shed or whatever for the horse and cart was most likely in a place like this. And I think there would have been a little house here or a cottage, and I believe that's what we're seeing here. But there's been even more sheds at the back corner of this place over here. You can see the wall lines sticking out of the thick vegetation. And this here's been like a bit of a yard, with the building obviously going along the back. A bit of an L shape, I think, from where I'm standing. Yeah, this is so special to throw this on camera, folks. It's amazing to have this on my channel at this time of year, because it's often so hard to get to the coolest historical ruins. That's why I love seeing things like this and uncovering the layers of history as I look around. And look, you can see there's been a building here. It's been probably like 10 foot across, and then there's been an entranceway or a pathway going up through between the buildings, and then this is what I was suspecting maybe where the house had been. Oh aye, so maybe the front of the house actually faced up this way. It's hard to know. I'm just uncovering the layers as I go, asking the question of history as we look at it. The crazy thing with this farm, the walls are built so thick. Look at the thickness of that wall there. Obviously with the stones tumbling down over the years, it's harder to gauge the original wall thickness, but the foot of these foundations here are beasts. Oh look, here we go. I was theorising that they had actually rerouted the water source down the side of this building. Look, this is what we've found here, folks. This is an incredible piece of history right here. This is the old water wheel pit. Wow, there's so many sheep. I better not get too excited or I'm going to scare them off. But look at this. This is where the old water wheel was mounted. Look at these massive bolt heads. Big brackets right there, folks. And that's why these adventures are so cool. I love seeing things that I've never seen, documenting history that I had no idea was here. And even though I'd been to this site, I didn't even know that hole was there. It's amazing the sheep didn't fall in there and get stuck. That is a deep, deep hole right there. I need to climb down. I'm only going to this edge though, I'm not going right into the hole, hopefully. Yeah, this is so cool, folks. There's actually spiders on webs and things. I can't even reach too far in. But the cool thing is, that's actually a tunnel. At the bottom of that dark, deep hole, the water would have been coming through here, turning this massive wheel, churning the water flowing, powering the farm and this mill shed that I thought originally was a house. It just shows we've uncovered the layers of the history and we've discovered this was the mill shed here at the site. And it's amazing to think how deep this is, and then obviously it would have been deeper originally. The water would have flowed under here, and then I think shit, there's a wasp. There's a wasp, folks. I'm freaking out. I think I swore on the channel there, and I do not normally swear. This was a real world event there. A wasp literally landed on my face. It's probably still on me. But this is the real drama that I would often cut the clip and the viewer wouldn't see what goes on between. But it's real. I can be enjoying a spot like that, looking at the history, and then boom, like the wasps are like, what's he doing? That's a great reason that I wore the wellies as well, because I was able to run through that mud. But yeah, look at this from this angle. There's been so much more, probably a shed over the top. Look at those big stones, the way they're laid in. Wow. A bee just came out of the hole under where the water wheel goes. Yeah, let's have a look over. This is where the water would have then flowed away from the site. And then look down into that hole there, flowing off. And look, there's even wee field boundaries and stuff at this side. Wow, yeah, wow. I keep saying wow, but see, after getting shook or getting a fright for that wasp, that's when you really need to refocus again, get back into history and think about what we're seeing. These stones here have probably fallen down from a higher level. This would have been like 1800s and stuff then, probably this farm was in its prime. There's another view down the hole. There's a cool old story with the farm in this glen where apparently the farmer, it was always thought he used to hide his money in the farm, and seemingly when he died, his kids or his sons or whatever came up and took the farm apart looking for the money, looking for where he had hidden it, and they never found anything. The farm was fully destroyed because they had obviously dismantled it looking for the hidden money. And that's a cool little story of this glen. So let's document this properly here, folks. This big stones, look at the way the bolts are. Oh my goodness, folks, the spider webs galore around this. Those big stones, the way they're mounted. I'm going to try and climb back up here to where I was. Real action on the channel, folks, and this is amazing to think then. My shadow's actually at a poor angle here, but this here would have been where the main mill shed was for this farm. And just think of the horse and cart maybe coming in with the straw and whatever else. The mill was obviously like bruising their grain and stuff as well, I think, but also they had a mill system for taking the barley and stuff off the straw, the same like the seed off the straw, the same way they do with a combine. I'm pretty sure back in the olden days they did that stuff like at the farm, but most of these farms had a thing like that, and that was for powering the bruiser. And farms even to this day still use a bruiser system for the oats or the barley or the wheat to break the grain so the animal can actually digest it within the feed. So there we go, that's fresh history, never seen before on the channel, and I can't believe there's not even like a wee fence or anything around that to stop the sheep going in. That's a fairly deep little hole there. No, unless they can run right under and come out below my feet here. But let's have a look up this side before we punch on further across this site. Let's have a proper look at this end of it. Whoa, it's a good job I wore the wellies, that's all I can say. Look at that. Why? Real action on the channel, folks. Look at this wall here then. Would this have been the farmhouse at this end then? Potentially, folks. This is what I often say about reading the land and uncovering the history. Sometimes once you've actually walked around the site, you can actually get a true picture in your mind of how it was all laid out, with the main farm buildings and then the little house where the family would have stayed. Probably generations of them looking out over this land, farming this land here, earning just enough to get by. Just like modern life, folks. It was no easier or harder probably back in the day. It was just different worries and different culture. Look at that, some of these stones here are amazing. This one's proper smooth. Look, there's two horseflies right there, folks. That's the kind of beast that nip you. You see so many of them on a day like today, especially where I am, in this kind of damp, grassy, field-like environment. But we're out here all conditions. I've said it before in the videos. Yeah, that's an interesting building. I was just trying to think, is it the house? I'm no 100% guaranteeing that yet. Look, that's like almost a big chunk of stone they've built the wall foundation on top of. That's like a naturally occurring big stone in the land here. Yeah, this has been the building. I think this has been the house, because it's about the size of a lot of the old houses. And look, here's the old fireplace, folks. We've found it. This is what I say about my adventures and piecing it together when you go to look at a site. The history itself gives you the clues so you can uncover the full picture. And look at this, the wee fireplace. So guaranteed the family or whoever had been sitting here on a chair in their house. The little farming family of that ancient time. Just think what they were wearing. Maybe old tweeds and stuff made with the wool that they had actually had from their own sheep. Look at the size of some of these stones. Look at this one, folks. Maybe a big lintel stone from above a door. Or here's another detail of the history from the time this was built. Look, there's an old drilling mark from when they must have split the stone. I'm sure back in the day they would chap in like big wedges and stuff to split the stone. Some people think back in the day, I think the Romans did it, they would put like wooden wedges and stuff in the gaps and then soak the stones, and then the wood would swell up and actually split the stone. Yeah, you can see here then the rectangle from this, which must have been the little farmhouse. And normally with a farmhouse or a family dwelling, they always had the wee fireplace, and that's a telltale sign of what we've got here. And that's so cool. This would have been probably the main fire that they cooked their meals on. Maybe cooking up a bit of beef that they had just butchered from one of their own cows. And think of the local trade and stuff back in those days as well. Maybe the families of this glen from the different crofts would all trade together. Yeah, and that must be the wee road that originally came into the farm, probably leading on up to the main road that's currently still there. But you can see the big stones on the original outer perimeter of this farm, and then the lead round in, and there's all these little bits here. This farm's so ancient. These trees have obviously grown since the time of the farm. Look at that, the big stones actually grown within the tree roots. It's all greasy and clean because of the sheep lying against that with their coats. Look how this land here has been levelled as well. And there's actually been an entranceway coming into this section as well from that track. So what we are seeing here in front of us is the old main farm track leading on all the way up. And then look, even this bit here has been levelled. And this here is actually the track leading down into the fields and the lower section of the farm down the hill. And just imagine the horse trotting its way around here with the farmer after they had a hard day's work back up here. Maybe ploughing with the horse and stuff like that originally. The horse was the main tool on the farm, the way that a tractor or whatever is nowadays. So that's cool, think of that. Maybe they had wee fields like this and then bigger areas beyond. But anyway, let's go and I'm going to punch over to this side of the hill now, because there's actually a cool wall line that I noticed when I first arrived in here. So let's go and have a look at it. So like a lot of these farms, most likely these other buildings, the house and such like, were abandoned first and no longer needed. And a farmer from the local area would have probably taken on the land, and then he probably used this shed for the longest time, up until probably recently, maybe even like the 80s or whatever, 90s even, judging for that roof. But it looks like one day it was just too far gone to use. Now it just gives the sheep a slight bit of shelter, the same way the old house and other buildings may have done at a certain time. The coolest historical detail we've seen so far is that water wheel location, the way it had been bolted in through that wall. I just love to see it, and I had no idea that was there. I could see the scar on the land from them redirecting the water, but I just thought that may be for their usual farm water supply rather than a water wheel. It is cool to think as well the people from that era had that way of powering their farms, not connected to the grid, but then having that heavy machinery operated from the water wheel. Nowadays you could have a similar thing with an electrical generator on it and you would be sorted. A lot of the old Scottish farms and buildings were already set up for that stuff, and then it was lost with the promise of modern, cheap, free electricity often was promised at times, and a lot of people went away from their own custom little systems like that, and now folk all want to go back to it. So check it out, this is the wall line that I was seeing from a distance, and this is the old boundary line, I believe, most likely for that croft over there. And you can see it, it's actually built with some big chunky stones. And it is interesting just to video this as well. It shows you the far perimeter, and probably the wall line that leads down the other end of that is the area that was owned by that croft originally. And it must have been so cool back in the day when it was all those individual crofts. Maybe not so much this land cleared and tamed, but still the sound of the sheep maybe kicking about. Often the crops, well, the crofts would just have a few crops and then a few animals, just enough to get by for themselves and probably for a bit of trade. They would have a few sheep and a few cows, probably some chickens, and probably just a lot of the similar stuff you would expect to find nowadays on a farm. It's just a smaller version of everything, more contained in a lot more individual little places. And what a cool land it's been to document this in. It was totally spontaneous coming down here, and it's like, it is mad. I just went straight over there to that location and boom, we've documented something that we'd never seen. That's what I love about this channel. I often amaze myself about how much history is all around, and to be able to share it with people all over the world, it makes it so much more fun. And to keep finding stuff every week, it's just, you know how it is, folks, it's amazing. Now I need to pretty much punch on straight back up this hill to where my car is. What a fun adventure it's been. Anyway, I'll just end this one here. We've seen some cool things, documented some history from 1800s, I would say. Probably into the 1900s, the later years of that croft. One day it just fell silent, abandoned and forgotten out on this wild moor, on this wild grassy Scottish hill. Now it's the home to many sheep, and you can see there's a few of them actually kicking about. One of them's coming this direction. So yeah, anyway, I'm going to end this one here. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll be back soon with the next one, wherever I end up going.